And one of these things that I'm talking about is streaming on the internet, and how legal or illegal is it? And I'm talking about streaming anything that really does not belong to you. So that's where copyright infringement and all these different things come into play. And to talk to us more about it this morning, Carla Parris, once again with us, entertainment and sport attorney. So good morning and welcome.
Hi, Ria. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. Now, explain to us, for people who may think they know what it is, but they getting it a little wrong. What exactly is live streaming?
Okay, so live streaming really refers to the live broadcast, live transmission of audio and video over the internet. So you would notice a lot of the times you go to events nowadays, you see people holding up devices and so forth. You know, it could be as simple as going Facebook Live, and that's exactly it. And streaming the event on the internet. That's live streaming.
Okay. Now, does it mean, when you're talking about live streaming, does it have a cutoff point? Like, okay, you're just streaming like maybe 2-3 minutes, or is it streaming a whole show? Is there legalities for how long you can do it, or is it any streaming at all?
Right. Well, typically, you know, technically it would be any streaming at all of the event, because they are a bundle of rights that are related to the content that you are displaying, which we will talk about later. But, you know, for copyright, for the whole concept of you to have infringed copyright, generally it would be a substantial portion of the event. You know, so we would have heard recently persons talking about persons streaming an entire event live, or half of the event or whatnot. Really and truly, it would be, as I said, substantiality, a couple of seconds or whatnot. No one is really going to come after you for that, you know.
So what exactly are the laws surrounding that area?
Right, so that's a good question, Ria. And what we need to understand in Trinidad and Tobago, that our laws with regard to this issue are actually quite up to date. Trinidad and Tobago is party to a number of conventions, most notably being the WIPO Copyright Treaty, the WIPO Performances and Phonograms Treaty, which speak to the whole issue of how content is displayed on the internet. We also have our national copyright law. And Section 20 to 25 of the Act deal with the whole issue of performers' rights to authorize or prohibit their performances being broadcast or rebroadcast, the whole issue of broadcasters who may have some sort of significant rights in the event, whether or not they authorize or prohibit the rebroadcasting of an event that they have the rights to. And then the whole question of whether or not you have the right to rebroadcast sound recordings, recorded music online. So our legislation is there. It's really a matter of whether or not people are monitoring these infringements. And then really and truly, it relates to the whole question of public apathy. That's where the question comes in. People say, oh, our laws aren't up to date and Trinidad is behind. That's not the case. The problem is the public are not sensitized or concerned about intellectual property infringements.
Yeah, and I think that is an unfortunate thing of how we think, of how Trinidadians, Trinbagonians think. Oh, it's we think, so we can do it.
Yes.
And that's a problem.
Yes.
But why is this a matter of concern specifically for promoters and broadcasters?
It's a matter for concern, because think about it in this way. You know that, you know, we had the Olympics recently. There are large events all the time in sporting events, entertainment events. Think about the Oscars. Think about the Grammys. You would know that there'll be particular stations who have the exclusive right to broadcast the event. For live events, it would be the same thing. A particular organization would have the right to broadcast the event, and then they would give the rights to another, it might be a media entity, might be another organization, to stream the event. This right, this is an intellectual property right, which an organization pays a significant amount of money to be able to have this exclusive right. Then what you do now, based on the fact that you have this exclusive right to broadcast this event, you then can garner more revenue from advertising. So you'd have sponsors come on board, you'd have specific advertisers. You would notice, for example, on some of these screens, like, let's say you're watching an event on television, or you're watching it on the internet, you've paid per view or whatnot, you would see that at the bottom of the screen there might be some sort of food company, you know, putting an advertisement, or car company, or whatever it is, you know, perfume or whatnot, that's revenue. So when you have a situation where there are a plethora of illegal and unauthorized streaming that takes place, and companies who have paid a lot of money for this exclusive right, it diminishes the value of the rights that you've given to them. And then next year, they may be less inclined, you see, to come on board with you to purchase these rights for you, because they're saying, well, what's the point? I've spent all this money to be the exclusive broadcaster, the exclusive streamer, and now here are all these different infringers, and nothing is happening. Why am I even bothering? You know?
I think there's also the aspect of, and I think this was said, I'm streaming this because I want people to see what's happening, people who can't come, people who are abroad, people who would like to be here, but you know, they want to see what's going on and they can't. And I'm not doing it for a profit. So what could be wrong in that? I'm just streaming it for people to see. I'm not making any money off of this. Why should it be illegal? Why should I be charged?
That's exactly the crux of the issue, Rhea. And the fact that you engage in this act for profit or not profit is completely immaterial. Whether or not you used somebody's material, you've recorded, you've broadcast, you've rebroadcast, and you're not charging anybody, it does not take away from the fact that what you have engaged in is an illegal act. As I've said, the Copyright Act is very clear that performers, owners of broadcast, owners of sound recordings, recorded music, they have the right to say whether or not they want their content to be rebroadcast. You understand it, think about it in this way. You know, we just came out of the carnival season, not even, you know, full 2 days. There are a lot of songs which we all love, we're passionate about, we want to hear over and over again. Does it give you and I the right to go online now, put this music on YouTube, or put it, you know, sell the content, or even let's say we're not selling it, you know, we're using it for some sort of charitable cause. Does it give you the right to just reproduce this because you love the culture or you're passionate about it? Absolutely not. Whether or not money there's a commercial aspect to this, does not negate the fact that your action is wrong.
Okay, now we're talking about concerts and various things like that, but what about if we're on the streets? We're looking at mass on the streets, and the bands are passing, and we're filming the bands passing, we're Facebooking it live, or we're recording it and then reposting it on whichever social media we're doing. What about that?
That's a different issue, because you see, you're in a public place.
Okay.
So there's the understanding would be that you're in a public place. So therefore, the whole question of you going Facebook Live or streaming or whatnot for a particular period of time would be okay. Right. This is a different story when you go to an event that you've purchased a ticket for, an event, as I said, where there's the whole question of persons' music being used, persons' performances, persons' and when I speak about performances, I'm not just talking about the performer, meaning the musician, the vocalists, background musicians, persons who play drums and whatnot. All of their rights are all wrapped up into this.
Okay. Well, I guess that answers the question if there are any exceptions basically with the copyright infringement. And if you can ever stream anything legally, what can you stream legally then? So
there are exceptions, and it's called the whole provision of fair use. So stations like yourself, CNMG, so you go to a particular concert, an event during carnival time, and you want now to be able to report on it, to say, okay, you know, we have the 7 o'clock news, these are the events that took place for the day. So you take a short clip of the event, and you display it. That's called fair use for reporting purposes, and so forth. In that case, you don't have to go and get the consent and so forth, because it's understood that it's in the public interest. And there are many other exceptions to fair use. Personal use, let's say you're using it for teaching purposes. You know, you might go to a music business lecture. I myself have engaged in a lot of public education. I would use short clips and so forth, but it's because it's for teaching purposes, there's that exception.
Okay, well, I didn't even know that one.
Yes.
For teaching purposes, because I think even with that, you know, once you're using someone's work, because, you know, even with libel, you know, if you're using written work and that sort of thing for your scripts and different things like that,
yes,
you have to credit whoever you take it from.
Absolutely. You still
need to credit.
You still need to credit, because you want to make sure that the understanding is that the music that you're displaying, the clip of the performance, has not come from you. But the whole question of having to go to get consent and so forth, that is what's negated because it falls under the fair use principles.
Okay, great. That's a good one to hear, especially for teachers, you know, people who want to use certain works. And especially I'm thinking again, you know, you want to use it as a teaching tool, you know, the different mask characters and different things that you see. I'm just thinking that as we're thinking Carnival, we're just out of Carnival. So that's a good something to note.
Yes.
What are some of the sanctions or some of the penalties that can be imposed on whoever is streaming without permission?
On the infringers?
Yes.
So we have criminal sanctions, civil sanctions. There are several fines, you know, that somebody could, you can be liable. The whole question of, let's say, you know, the company who had the rights to the event found out beforehand that another company was going to stream. You can now go, the whole question of an injunction, seek an injunction to stop them from streaming your event. If you did not know beforehand, but you found out after the fact, then there's the whole question of whether you are going to seek an account of profits. Let's say that they did stream it for some sort of monetary gain. The question of going after damages, you know, getting damages because of the fact that they did not come to you beforehand. You can seek a remedy in that way. There are a multitude of sanctions that our Copyright Act you know, speaks to in the event of this type of infringement. So persons can't say that they aren't aware. It's all there in our laws.
I want to talk about, okay, after the fact, I think might be, if I want to say a little simpler, but supposing that this infringement is found during the act, while a concert, while a show is going on, and it's found during.
Yes.
And you said you can impose sanctions or do a final injunction while that is happening. How exactly does that happen? Do you have to go to a lawyer, a court, get the injunction? And I mean, this is something like it's happening at nighttime.
Yeah. Well, okay, so during the event, it's a little different. If you find out before the event, that's when you seek legal action, you know.
But it's hardly likely you might know before that somebody is going to be streaming my show live.
Right. Well, sometimes you do. Okay. You know, sometimes it is. I've had matters like that where persons are aware, you know, but this is a small society.
And if it's
an
individual, you know, you're not really going to know that.
Well, that's true. Right. But if you're talking about during the event, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because this speaks to the whole question, as I said, of public sensitivity, of apathy and whatnot. You would note when you go to concerts worldwide, there would be recorded messages before and during the event would say, please do not use your cell phones. Don't record the event. You remember, you would note this.
Yes.
Do not videotape and so forth. So this is a matter that I think we need to be more sensitized to as well. Because if we have these messages during the event, during the breaks and so forth, then it also would raise awareness. So if you ask me, you know, what happens during an event, really would be a matter of that point in time of whoever your point persons are, let's say your monitoring officers, let's call it that, they would have to go directly to the person and say, listen, you know, put down your phone, you can't stream this live, you can't be recording this for this length of time. It's just a matter of that. And then it would be up to the promoter of the event, the owner of the event, whether they want to initiate action after the fact, you know, after that event. But I think the whole question of having these recorded, you know, segments or so forth, messages during our events is something that we should look into locally in theaters, across the board.
And I think sometimes too, you don't really, I mean, we see it at Panorama, well not Panorama, we see it at the carnival events where they have no unauthorized photography or videographing or anything like that. We see those signs.
Right.
But we don't typically see them if we go to a concert, if we go to the theater, we don't always. Sometimes we do, we don't always see them. And I think with respect to this, if you really want to protect your rights as a promoter, as a whatever it is you're doing, you need to have those signs up so that you can legally go to someone and say, you cannot be doing this at my show.
Well, you could go to them regardless of whether you have to sign up or not.
But we don't have any sign up, so I could do what I want. You have nothing up. People can do that. They will say that.
They can say that. It won't protect them.
Okay.
It won't protect them. But it is in the promoter's best interest. It is in the owner of the rights owner's best interest. I think, given that we're still becoming sensitive to these issues in society, to take charge of your own affairs. These are your rights that you want to protect. Let people know.
And I think it's your money that you're going to be losing as well.
Precisely. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you once again, Carla. I mean, you really shed a lot of light on this topic for us. We know that we cannot be streaming these things live without permission, so please cease and desist.
Yes.
Because you can be charged if the promoters or whoever want to take,
Action afterwards. You absolutely can be charged. Yes.
Yeah, so please take note of that. Anybody who wants to do this, you need to have permission to do so. Think about it. If you had something going on, you wouldn't want someone doing that to you either. So think about it that way. Thank you, Carla Parris.
Thank you, Ria.
Entertainment and sport attorney here on Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago. We've got so much more coming up, so you need